The sound of breaking glass cut through 63 conversations at once. Every head in the room turned. My mother had knocked over her champagne flute, an accident she'd claim later, but in that half-second of silence before the laughter started, I heard my father's voice carry across the banquet hall with perfect clarity. "Finally," he said, raising a fresh glass toward my younger sister. "A daughter worth celebrating." 71 people laughed. My husband squeezed my hand under the table. I smiled the way I'd been smiling my entire life in that family. Wide enough to pass inspection, hollow enough to survive it. My name is Diana Mercer. I'm 31 years old. I'm a licensed CPA with 8 years of experience untangling other people's financial disasters. And for most of my adult life, I genuinely believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, and loved my family unconditionally enough, they would eventually see me. That night at the Riverside Grill with 71 witnesses and 1 shattered champagne glass, I finally understood they never would. What I didn't know yet was that they'd done something far worse than ignore me. They'd been using my name, my professional license, my signature, my entire identity, to build a house of cards worth over $2 million. And it was already starting to fall. Growing up, my sister Nicole was the family miracle. She arrived 7 years after me, premature and fragile, and my parents restructured their entire lives around her survival. I understood that. I never resented it. I was 7 years old and I held her tiny hand through the incubator glass, and I promised her she was safe. What I didn't understand was that the restructuring never ended. By the time Nicole was in high school, I had learned to be invisible in ways that felt like virtues. I cooked dinner so my mother could attend Nicole's volleyball games. I took out student loans so Nicole could have the college fund. I joined my father's accounting firm straight out of college, not because it was my dream, but because he needed someone reliable, and I had spent my whole life auditioning for that role. I was good at the job. Better than good, honestly. Within 4 years, I had brought in 3 major corporate clients and restructured the firm's billing system to increase revenue by 30%. My father acknowledged this the way he acknowledged most things I did. With a brief nod and a pivot toward whatever Nicole had accomplished that week, I met my husband Marcus at a client dinner when I was 26. He was a civil engineer, steady and warm and utterly baffled by my family dynamics the first time he met them. On the drive home from that first dinner, he was quiet for a long time before he said, "Do they know how much you do for them?" I told him they did. I almost believed it. Marcus and I got married quietly, a courthouse ceremony and dinner with close friends because my parents were in the middle of planning Nicole's elaborate engagement party, and I didn't want to create scheduling conflicts. I told myself it was practical. Marcus went along with it because he loved me, but I caught the look he exchanged with his mother at the dinner table, and I filed it away in the place where I stored all the things I wasn't ready to examine. We bought a small house, 20 minutes from my parents. I continued working at the firm. Life was, by most measures, fine. Then my father announced the company anniversary gala, and everything I thought I understood collapsed. The gala was my father's idea. 30 years of Mercer Financial Consulting, celebrated at the Riverside Grill with a sit-down dinner for the firm's clients, partners, and family. I organized most of it. I booked the venue, coordinated with the caterer, designed the program. My name appeared nowhere in the program. Nicole flew in from Denver with her fiancé, Carter, who worked in real estate development, and had the particular confidence of someone who had never been told no. My father greeted them at the airport personally. I know because my mother sent me a photo with the caption, "The whole family together." I was not in the photo. Marcus noticed before I did. He held my phone and looked at the photo for a moment, then set it face down on the kitchen counter and said, "You don't have to go, you know." "They're my family," I said. "Diana." He said my name the way he always did when he thought I was lying to myself. Just my name. Like a door he was holding open, I went anyway. The dinner started well enough, or at least neutrally. I was seated at a table near the back with 2 junior associates from the firm and their spouses. Not the family table, which I noted but didn't comment on. Marcus sat beside me and quietly refilled my water glass and made small talk about the table centerpieces, which were beautiful and which I had personally selected. Then my father stood up to speak. He talked for 20 minutes. He talked about building the firm from nothing, about the clients who became friends, about his vision for the next 30 years. He talked about Nicole, how proud he was of the woman she'd become, how Carter was a wonderful addition to the family, how he hoped they'd carry the Mercer name forward with pride. He talked about the firm's future, about bringing in fresh blood, family blood, to lead the next generation. He never said my name. I sat 15 feet away from him and he spoke for 20 minutes and I did not exist. I felt Marcus's hand find mine under the table. I focused on the texture of the tablecloth. White linen, slightly starched. I counted the stitches along the hem. I did not cry because I had learned very young that crying in front of my family only made things worse. Then Nicole stood up. She hadn't been scheduled to speak. This was unplanned. And she tapped her glass and smiled her brilliant, practiced smile and said, "I just want to add that Dad and I have been talking. And Carter and I are going to be relocating back here. And Carter is going to be joining the firm as a partner." Applause. My father beaming. My mother dabbing her eyes. I was the one who had worked at that firm for 8 years. I was the one who had saved it from an IRS audit in 2019 with 3 weeks of 16-hour days. I was the one who knew where every number came from, every client relationship, every filing. Carter had a real estate license and a smile. I kept my face very still. Marcus's grip tightened on my hand. He leaned close and said, very quietly, "We can leave." "Not yet," I said. I don't know why I said it. Some instinct, the same one that makes you stay at the table when you sense the conversation is about to reveal something important. I was right, though not in the way I expected. 2 days after the gala, I received a letter from a collections agency. It was addressed to me at my home address regarding an outstanding commercial loan in the amount of $2,100,000. The creditor was listed as Cornerstone Business Lending. The account holder was listed as Diana L. Mercer, DBA Mercer Financial Consulting Group. I read it 3 times. Then I sat down on the kitchen floor, still in my work clothes, and I stayed there until Marcus found me 40 minutes later. "Talk to me," he said, crouching beside me. I handed him the letter. He read it once, stood up, and said, "I'll call our attorney." I couldn't speak yet. I was running through the math. $2 million, commercial loan. My name, my professional license used as the DBA. If this was real, if this loan existed, it had been taken out in my name without my knowledge. And as the licensee, I would be the one facing professional sanctions, potential criminal liability, and complete financial destruction. My hands were steady. That was the strange thing. My hands were completely steady. I'm a CPA. I know what financial fraud looks like. I had just never expected to find it in my own father's firm with my own name on the documents. Our attorney, a brisk woman named Patricia Hollis who had handled our home closing and a contract dispute for Marcus's company, took the meeting the next morning. I brought everything I had, my employment records, my professional license documentation, every tax filing I had prepared under my own name. I had never signed off on any commercial loan. I had never authorized any DBA registration for a lending vehicle. Patricia looked at the collections letter, looked at me and said, "How much access did your father have to your professional credentials?" The answer, I realized as I sat there, was complete. I had trusted him implicitly. I worked in the same office. My license was filed in the firm's administrative documents. My signature, I thought of all the documents I had signed over 8 years, all the routine filings I had countersigned without reading every line, because I trusted the people who prepared them. "I need to see the original loan documents," Patricia said. It took her 4 days to obtain them. When she showed them to me, I found my signature on the application. It was a good forgery. It was good enough that if I hadn't been looking for it, I might not have noticed the slight inconsistency in the way the L in my middle name curved. But I had been looking for it. And I noticed. Patricia noticed too. "Diana," she said carefully, "do you understand what this means?" "Yes," I said. "It means my father used my license to secure a fraudulent commercial loan and has been defaulting on it long enough for it to reach collections. And it means," she said, "that Carter's arrival at the firm was likely intended to restructure the debt under new management before the default became public. I thought about Nicole's smile at the gala, Carter joining as a partner. Fresh blood, family blood. I thought about how neither of them had told me. I thought about 8 years of dinners I cooked and forms I filed and client relationships I built and an IRS audit I survived alone. And then something in me went very, very quiet. Not the quiet of giving up, the quiet of deciding. I didn't call my father. I didn't confront my mother. I didn't text Nicole. What I did, 3 days after meeting with Patricia, was make an appointment with a forensic accountant named Roger Tran, who had been recommended by a colleague and who, it turned out, had testified as an expert witness in 4 federal fraud cases. I gave Roger access to every firm document I could legally obtain. I had legitimate access to most of them. I was still technically an employee, still had my system login, still had 8 years of institutional knowledge about where every file lived. What Roger found in 6 days of work would take me longer to process. The $2 million loan was not the only one. There was a second commercial loan for $800,000, also in my name from a different lender. There were 3 vendor contracts that listed me as the authorizing officer for services that had never been rendered. The payments had gone to an LLC registered to a shell address in Nevada. The LLC's registered agent, when Patricia traced it, turned out to be Carter. My future brother-in-law had been using my professional license as collateral for a financial structure that appeared designed to siphon money from my father's firm before it collapsed, and to leave my name as the signature on the rubble. I sat across from Roger in his downtown office on a Tuesday afternoon and I listened to him explain what he'd found, and I thought about that little girl standing at the incubator glass. I had promised my sister she was safe. She had taken that promise and spent 24 years handing it to people who used it against me. "What are your options?" Roger asked. "I want to know all of them," I said. Marcus was the only person I told. He sat at our kitchen table and listened to everything: the loans, the Shell LLC, Carter's involvement, the forged signatures. And when I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What do you need from me?" Not "what are you going to do?" Not "I can't believe it." Just, "What do you need?" That's why I married him. "I need you to trust that I have a plan," I said. "I always trust you," he said. "Do you want to tell me the plan?" "Not yet. The fewer people who know, the better it works." He nodded. He refilled "who know, the better it works." He nodded. He refilled my coffee. He didn't ask again. Patricia and Roger had outlined 2 parallel paths. The first was civil litigation, suing my father and Carter for fraud, forgery, and professional damages. This would be slow, expensive, and public in a way that would involve my professional license board. The second was simpler, faster, and far more permanent. Patricia had a contact at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Fraud involving commercial lending across state lines. The Shell LLC was registered in Nevada. The loans were issued by lenders in 2 different states. Fell under federal jurisdiction. The evidence we had was, in Roger's professional assessment, exceptionally clean. All it required was one report. One detailed, documented, meticulously organized report filed with the correct federal agency with Roger's forensic analysis attached. I spent 4 days writing it. It was the best work I'd ever done. I sent it on a Thursday. I didn't tell my father. I didn't warn Nicole. I didn't send an angry message or make a dramatic phone call or show up at the gala's aftermath with accusations. I simply opened my laptop at 7 in the morning, attached the report, attached Roger's analysis, attached Patricia's legal summary, and sent the email to the address Patricia had provided. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk with Marcus. It was a cool morning. The kind where the air smells like rain that hasn't arrived yet. We walked the long way around the park near our house, and Marcus bought coffee from the cart by the fountain, and we sat on a bench and watched a man teach his small daughter how to feed the ducks, and I felt, for the first time in longer than I could remember, completely calm. "Is it done?" Marcus asked. "It's done," I said. He handed me my coffee. "How do you feel?" I thought about it honestly. Like I finally stopped carrying something that was never mine to carry. The investigation moved faster than Patricia had predicted. Within 2 weeks, the lending institutions had been contacted. Within a month, the Shell LLC had been traced and frozen. Carter's assets were reviewed. My father received a formal notice of investigation. I know these details not because anyone in my family told me, but because I had filed as a victim witness and was kept informed through legal channels. My father called me once. I let it go to voicemail. He said he wanted to explain. That things had gotten out of hand. That he had meant to tell me. That family should handle things privately. I listened to the voicemail exactly once, then forwarded it to Patricia, who noted it as potentially useful. My mother texted me 12 times over 2 weeks. The texts moved through several stages: confusion, then defensiveness, then a lengthy message about how I had always been difficult and this was not how families handled problems. I read that one twice, not because it hurt, but because I wanted to remember exactly how it felt to finally have evidence that what I had sensed my entire life was real. They had never seen me as family the way they saw Nicole. And now, faced with consequences, their first instinct was to make it my fault. I didn't respond to any of it. Nicole called on a Sunday evening, 3 weeks after I filed the report. I answered because I had decided I would answer once, because I had 24 years of love for my sister that deserved the dignity of a real conversation, even if she didn't know that's what it was. Diana, her voice was tight. Do you understand what you've done? Yes, I said. Do you? Silence. Carter didn't. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she said. Dad was going to fix it. They were going to pay it back. With what? I asked. The firm has been losing major clients for 2 years. The operating account was 30% below baseline when I last checked the books. Where exactly was the repayment coming from, Nicole? Another silence. You were going to let my license get destroyed, I said. It wasn't an accusation. It was just a fact, stated plainly. You were going to let me take the fall for this. Dad would never have let that happen. Dad forged my signature. She didn't answer. I love you, I said. I have loved you since before you could breathe on your own. But I'm not going to destroy myself for a family that spent 30 years treating my love as a resource to extract rather than a relationship to honor. I hope you find a way to be okay, but I'm done. I hung up. Marcus was in the doorway. He'd heard all of it. Okay, he asked. Yes, I said. And I meant it. Carter was formally charged 4 months later, wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. The charges carried serious federal weight. My father, as the firm's principal, was charged as a co-conspirator. Both of their attorneys moved quickly to negotiate. As part of the settlement process, the fraudulent loans were formally disassociated from my name. My professional license received a clean clearance letter from the state board. Roger Tran's forensic report was entered into the official record and Patricia filed for civil damages on my behalf. I had also, quietly and on Patricia's advice, spent those 4 months documenting 8 years of my contributions to the firm, the clients I brought in, the revenue I generated, the crisis I resolved alone in 2019. The civil claim included unpaid compensation and professional damages. The settlement was reached without going to trial. I'm not going to share the amount. What I will say is that Marcus and I paid off our mortgage. I see my family in none of the ways that used to define us. There are no Sunday dinners, no holiday calls, no reflexive checking in that I used to do out of obligation disguised as love. What I have instead is a life that fits me. I left my father's firm, obviously, and opened my own practice 6 months after the investigation began. I took 2 of my father's long-term clients with me, clients I had serviced personally for 5 years, who called me when they heard the firm was in trouble and asked where I was going. I have 4 employees. We're profitable. I like coming to work. Marcus and I are renovating the backyard. It's a project we've talked about for years. The kind of thing you defer when you're spending your emotional energy keeping other people's houses standing. I think sometimes about that little girl at the incubator glass. How much she meant it when she promised her sister was safe. I don't blame her. She was 7 years old and she was doing what 7-year-olds do. She was loving as hard as she could and trusting that it would be enough. It wasn't. But that was never her failure. I made 1 report, 4 pages, plus exhibits, sent at 7 in the morning on a Thursday while my husband slept. I didn't yell. I didn't confront. I didn't beg them to see me. I just stopped protecting people who had never once protected me. And I let the truth do what truth does when you finally stop helping people hide it. Some people, when I've told parts of this story, ask if I regret it, if I wish I'd handled it differently, if I miss them. I miss who I wanted them to be. I think that's different from missing who they actually were. What I don't miss is the weight of it, that particular exhaustion that comes from loving people who treat your love as leverage, that specific loneliness of sitting at a table full of your own family and being invisible. I don't miss that at all. Marcus asked me recently, on one of our evening walks, what I would say to my younger self if I could. The version of me who was cooking dinners and taking out loans and filing other people's paperwork while they celebrated without her. I thought about it for a long time. I'd tell her, I said finally, that silence isn't the same as compliance. That you can be the quietest person in the room and still be the most dangerous one, when you're quiet for the right reasons. He smiled. And what are the right reasons? Because you're thinking, I said. Because you're watching. Because you're building something they don't know about yet. We walked the rest of the way home without talking, which is one of my favorite things about my life now. The silence is mine. I chose it. And there's nothing in it but peace.